Welcome to Epic Begins with One Step Forward, the podcast that reveals how to plan, achieve, and enjoy the journey of creating epic results in your life, business, health, and relationships. Here's your host, best-selling author and motivational speaker, Xander Sprague.
Hello, epic people, and welcome back to another exciting episode of Epic Begins with One Step Forward. I'm your host, Xander Sprague, and today I am joined by Ray Martin. Ray Martin, aka The Daily Explorer, is an entrepreneur and award-winning business leader. As a coach, mentor, and facilitator, speaker, writer, and mindfulness teacher, he's the torchbearer for greater human consciousness. Ray is also a marathon runner, a fundraiser. He's on a mission to empower people to live authentically and bring more joy and happiness into the world. Ray, welcome.
Wow, what a lovely welcome. Thank you very much. It's a pleasure to be here.
I'm so excited. There's so many different things that you and I have to talk about.
Okay.
But is there something to start off with that you'd like to share with the audience?
Only that it's just a real pleasure to be, sitting talking to you, knowing that you've got a group of people out there who are interested in things like personal growth and wellness and well-being and, finding your true path in life and these sorts of things, which is something I'm passionate about. So I'm just really happy to be here and to share what I've learned. I'm not the world's expert, but I've got some experience of this, which I'm really happy to talk about.
Absolutely. Well, the first thing I want to talk about is something that you and I share in common is I too, well, I'm not actively doing it, but I too have run marathons and stuff. And I have to say that for me, marathon running is such a transformative experience for honestly reshaping my life in the sense that I learned I relearned things that I actually knew, but I had forgotten. And one of those was that structure is my friend. I actually really like structure. And I learned that because when I wanted to run a marathon, I had no idea how the heck I was going to run 26.2 miles.
Me too.
That's a really long way.
Yeah.
And, but I was handed I joined Teaming Training, which is the fundraising side of Leukemia and Lymphoma Society, and they handed me a training schedule. And all of a sudden, I had structure and it got so much easier. So I'm interested, how many marathons have you run? And what was your when you made that decision, how did you get yourself from, I've decided to do this to, I'm actually running?
Yeah, it's a really good question. I did my first marathon when I was 49.
Yeah.
And at that point, I was 4 years into a kind of what I would call an accidental, unplanned journey. I went on a 6-month sabbatical when I left London in 2005, and I really genuinely believed it was going to be for 6 months. But I kept on extending my trip as I was learning and seeing things. I ended up doing that backpack trip for 14 years, but I'll come back to that later. But 4 years in, I'd been traveling around Asia and I'd seen things that had really touched my heart, that really sparked big emotional response. I'd been to an elephant sanctuary in Thailand where they were rescuing wild elephants that had been blown up by landmines and things like this. And I'd been to an orphanage in Nepal because I'd trekked in the Himalayas, and I'd organized a picnic for about 60 kids. And I saw how much joy and happiness just that simple picnic brought. And I thought, God, what else could I do?
Sure.
And then at the same time, a really close friend of mine in England died from cancer. And I realized that I could support the research that was being done to stop other people from dying. So I sort of started to think, I wonder what I could do. Maybe I could start a foundation or do some fundraising or something. But I had no idea what the activity would be.
Sure.
But it was at a time in the journey where I was opening my mind and my heart to being guided by the universe, let's say, in a simple way. Again, I'll talk more about that if you want, but I'd switch from rationally, logically planning everything to following my intuition and being guided by my inner wisdom and letting the universe give me signs and confirmation signals to tell me I was in the right direction.
Right.
So as I was sitting pondering for weeks, what could I do? What could I do? Not answering the question. One night, my girlfriend who I was traveling with introduced me to two friends of hers, a couple from England, and one of them, a guy called Matt Campbell, he'd run about 6 marathons. He was 10 years younger than me, but I said, what's it like running a marathon? And he told me, and I noticed, Xander, that as he spoke, my body and my skin started to tingle. I noticed that physiological response. And I'd started to realize that when I get those kinds of signals, it's really worth paying attention to. Something was going on for me. I thought, wow, this feels exciting. And I asked him loads of questions about it. And then the big question was, I said, Matt, do you think I could run a marathon? I'm 49. He said, have you ever run before? I said, no, not even 100 meters. I didn't know anything about running, nothing. He said, I'll tell you what, I know why you want to do it, because he knew about the money I wanted to raise. He said, right, if you stay here in Chiang Mai, where I live, for 6 months, I will train you how to run a marathon. I'll get you on the start line of a marathon, and I'll do that for you. So I shook his hand and said, okay, I'll do it. So I just agreed to do it. And then I had to start raising funds before I started my training. So I went out into the world via social media and said, I'm going to do this marathon to raise money for these things. Please start donating and supporting. So I'd made myself accountable then. I couldn't back out. And the first day that I arrived at the lake where Matt wanted to get a sense of my fitness, he just got me to run 2 kilometers around this small lake. I finished that gasping for breath on the floor, choking, saying, I can't believe I've agreed to do this. What the hell have I done? You know, I'll never be able to run a marathon. I'll never do it. And Matt said, trust me, I know what I'm doing. I will have you in 12 weeks from now. I'll have you running a half marathon and you'll finish it easily. Yeah. And then I did the New York Marathon in 2009. It's my first ever marathon. I managed to get a place, luckily. And I raised $15,000 for the fund.
Awesome.
And then took it back to Nepal and to Thailand and did things with the money and oversaw the way it was spent. And from then I was hooked. I've done 5 now. I did 4 more after that and raised about $50,000.
Wow, great. That's awesome. Yeah, I've done 10 halves, 4 fulls, and a 50K ultra.
Yeah. Oh my God, a 50K ultra. Oh,
I know. Well, yeah, the funny story on that one is I was training for a marathon, and my coach, who was a former Ironman, runs ultras and stuff, and he was running with me, and I was like, oh, I'm gonna go run a marathon. And then I was asking him about, we were running up this really steep hill, and I go, what do you do? Because ultras tend to be like billy goating up. There's like, oh, there's only 9,000 feet of climbing, and and stuff. And he goes,
you're kidding, 9,000
no, I mean, it's like, some of them are honestly ridiculous. And he's like, well, when you're running 50 miles or 100 miles, you're walking up the hills. There's like, you don't have to run up every single hill, right? No. And in fact, you kill yourself, because you could be running for 24 hours, right? So he's like, and then he goes, if you can run a marathon, you could do a 50K. It's only 5 more miles. Yeah, right. It's true. Now in that moment, Ray, it made sense. I'm like, yeah, okay, I can. I mean, you're right. If I can do that, sure. Yeah. Now, of course, there's a difference between, hey, I want to run a marathon, because it seems like a good idea 6 months ago. But then when you get on the start line, all of a sudden you have that, oh my gosh, I'm running a marathon. What am I doing? What was I thinking? Kind of. Yeah, exactly. And or you're doing the race, and all of a sudden you have some of those challenging miles where you're like, this is really hard. Yeah. And so I got into the I did the ultra, but let me tell you, those last 5 miles were really challenging. Yeah, I bet. Epically hard. But again, I completed it. I was really happy that I completed. And that's ultimately what I like to say to people is, you finish. The great thing
Yeah.
about running a marathon is when you finish, you usually get a medal. And
Yes.
I know I'm really proud of all the medals that I've earned.
Yeah.
And people don't tend to go, "Oh, what was your time?" They just are like, "Oh my gosh, you ran a marathon."
Yeah, exactly.
And your time doesn't matter. So
No.
what are the other marathons that you've completed?
I did New York, London, Berlin, one in Thailand in Phuket, and Warsaw in Poland. And
Wow.
that was my personal best, the Warsaw in Poland. And I did that one when I was 54, actually. So it
Wow.
took me 6 years to break the 4 hour barrier for a
Well,
marathon. So,
much faster than me, but
yeah.
I was, for me, the highlight of my marathon career was I got lucky enough to be given a bib for the 2014 Boston Marathon.
Oh,
So,
yeah, that's tough to get in because you need a qualifying time,
well,
don't
you
you?
do. To
Yeah.
be clear, I did not qualify. I got in because actually my younger sister was a massage therapist and
Oh,
did
great.
post marathon work for Adidas and
Right.
the non runners and stuff. She goes, "Would you ever want to run Boston?" And I'm like, "Hello, yes."
Yes,
So
definitely.
she's like, "Let me ask," and they gave me. I was fortunate enough to be given a bib and stuff. So, but that
Fantastic.
Boston was phenomenal. Now I grew up outside of
Yeah.
Boston, so I grew up watching it,
Yeah.
but had no idea. I mean, I knew the course, which I have to say was not a good thing, Ray.
Yeah.
Well, because I had nightmares of having somehow made a wrong turn and adding six
Okay.
miles because I knew, like, I literally knew the first like 6 miles I didn't really know, but after that,
All
because
right.
I grew up out in the suburbs, but then lived close, in Boston and just outside of
Yeah.
Boston, I knew Heartbreak Hill. I'd run it before. I knew the whole course. I'm like, oh
Is it pretty flat?
no, no.
Oh, okay.
It's a net downhill, but
Oh, okay.
um, things that make it challenging. The first 5K are slightly downhill, so you start the race, you're all nervous,
Right.
and you're flying.
Okay.
You're trying not to, but you're all excited, and now you're going downhill. You're like, wow, this is really wow, I'm doing
Yeah.
well.
Yeah.
Then it gets flat, but then you have a lot of it's really more the downhills that really
Right.
get you.
Right.
Um, but you have what they call Heartbreak Hill, which in and of itself is just
Yeah.
a series of steps. It's not steep. It comes miles 17 to
Just
20.
relentless and at the
And
wrong time.
you've just come out of a whole lot of hills. So your
Oh,
quads are all blown out
oh gosh.
and stuff. So,
Oh
but
dear.
it is, I have to say that of the marathons I did run, I
Yeah.
was supported for every step of the way. There were people there cheering, and it was phenomenal.
Yeah.
So I also wanted you said that and you may still be on this epic journey of I'm going for 6 months, and it turned into 14 years, 15
That's
years.
right. Yeah. 14 years. Yeah.
Wow. And that is, and was it that you just sort of, what was for extending? Was it just that you were having fun and you felt there was still more to learn?
Yeah. I mean, what triggered the journey was that I had run a business in England with
Mm-hmm.
my business partner, who was the woman I was married to.
Mm-hmm.
And we were a really fantastic couple and did so brilliantly together to build this business up and make it successful.
Mm-hmm.
It was one of the happiest periods of my life. And the day when she came home quite suddenly and unexpectedly said, "I'm leaving you and I'm leaving the company,"
Wow.
it sort of, I kind of wanted life to end at that point. If I'm really honest, it felt like literally the end.
Sure.
Um, and at the same time, my dad got very ill and he passed away, shortly afterwards while I was sort of finding a new place to live as we separated.
Mm-hmm.
And so within 2 or 3 months, my life, I'd won the Daily Telegraph Business Leader of the Year award 6 months before. So
Sure.
my professional life had really taken off. and I had a lot of recognition for the work I did. But behind the scenes, my life was just falling apart. It was horrible,
Sure.
and I just couldn't bear the gap. And so I knew I had to do something radical. I didn't know what. And for a year, I was just sort of paralyzed. And then very good friends of mine said, "Why don't you take a 6 month sabbatical? You'll figure out what to do if you do that.
Sure.
Go have a change of scene, go somewhere, go and do some traveling, get your mind off everything."
Sure.
I thought that's a really good idea. So I actually sold my home in London because I believed that I'd be back quite soon and I'd buy a smaller apartment or something,
Sure.
and I'd start something else. So I sold that up. That meant I had to do something with all the stuff in the house. So I gave it all away, or sold it, or I got my stuff in life. I love that book by the minimalists, Joshua Fields Milburn and Ryan Nicodemus.
Yeah.
I got my stuff down to one bag of clothes weighing 22 kilos and a laptop. The rest of the stuff went. I didn't keep anything. I thought I'm going back to zero. So I got rid of everything. And I bought a ticket to Thailand and to start backpacking around Asia, bought a backpack, etc. And after 5 or 6 months, when I thought I would be back, I was still very agitated, very scared, very disoriented. I didn't know what I wanted to do. And someone said to me, "Why don't you do a Vipassana retreat?" Now, I didn't even know what that was, Xander. When they said that, I said, "Vipassana, what's that?" They said, "It's a Buddhist meditation retreat. You go into a monastery with Buddhist monks. For 10 days, you're silent and you sit and you meditate." And I'd never been silent for more than 10 minutes. So it seemed like a joke to think I could do such a thing. But the more he described it and talked about it, I got these body sensations, and I trusted my instinct, and I knew it was the right thing to do. I just knew it. And so I did that, and it just completely and utterly blew my mind. I walked out of that place as if I had a volume knob on the side of my head where 10 is like the noisy mind, really noisy.
Right.
And someone had turned it down to a 1 out of 10.
Yeah.
I still had a bit of noise, but it was nothing like it. And I knew I wanted to stay on the path of developing that practice of mindfulness. So I decided to stay around and find a mindful meditation community and be part of it, which I did. And so I was continuing in the journey because I was growing and I was deepening my own self-awareness, and I was learning about humanity, and I was learning stuff I didn't know about. And I loved the learning, and that's what kept me going. It wasn't really about so much fun. I did have fun too, but the real attraction of it was the deepening and the learning that was going on for me, because it was enabling me to realize that most of the choices I'd made up to that moment in my life, Bronnie Ware describes this in her book, The 5 Regrets of the Dying. She says, you ask any person on their deathbed what they most regret, they always say the same thing, always the same. I wished I'd lived my life true to myself and not the life that others expected me to live.
Absolutely.
And I knew, even though I'd been a successful CEO and all these things, that was a life that someone else expected me to live. It wasn't really my life. It didn't feel like my own choice.
Right.
And so I was determined to stay on this path of exploration long enough that I got the insights I needed to know what's my choice, what do I want to do with my life. And I eventually did come to that clarity, but it took me much longer than I ever imagined.
Well, yeah, and sometimes it doesn't. And I have to say, Ray, I totally agree that that choice is just key. It's so important.
Yeah.
And I find, I mean, I certainly in parts of my life have done this, forgot that I actually do have choice.
Yes.
And I will absolutely own that sometimes the choices that we have are crap and crappier. Like they're not choices that we want to make. But there is so much power in not just saying, I can't do anything, or I don't have any choice here.
Yeah.
We do. And
what makes us make those choices? I've always
I know.
I can never figure it out.
I know, but like you're like, oh, I don't have any choices. You know, well, we'll go back to you. My partner is leaving the company, or my successful company, and she's leaving our relationship, right? What do I do, right? Do I go on with my company? How do I do that? What about this relationship, right? And so both both are not choices that you would ever imagine that you had to make at
No,
that moment.
no, that's
However,
right.
when I think when we empower ourselves and remind ourselves that we do have choice, and when we define our situation, don't let it define us. All of a
Yes,
sudden, you're like, there is some power in saying, I'm choosing this. I wish I had another choice. It's fine to say, I wish I had a better choice or whatever.
yes,
But look at you. You're like, I no, but
yeah,
even that choice of I'm choosing to not go back to my England life
yeah,
because I'm not ready. I don't know I don't know what I'm doing yet. And
yeah,
I certainly have been in that thing where I was at kind of a crossroads in my career
mm,
years ago, and I'm like, what do I want to do? I know I need to make a transition because what I've been
yeah,
doing for a job isn't working for me. I'm not in
yeah,
the right place.
yeah.
And what I found is I got more clarity by focusing on what I didn't want in a job versus what I wanted. Because sometimes you go, well, what do I
Right.
want? I have no idea. But
Yes.
a lot of people can get really clear about things that they don't want. I don't want a lot of, I don't want a high stress work environment.
Yes.
I don't want, I want to be around people who care, not just, are,
Yeah.
you know, they're driven, but in a different way, if that makes
Yeah.
sense.
No, it does make sense completely. Yeah.
So, yeah, and that helped me sort of look at the jobs that I had had and what aspects of those jobs did I
Yeah.
really like. And that led me to doing technical instruction for
Yeah.
17 years because I was like, oh,
Brilliant.
I like teaching. I'm a natural teacher. I'm curious about
Beautiful.
stuff and I want to share it.
I love what you're
So,
saying. I love what you're saying, Sandra, because often when I'm coaching people, I ask them to think about what the thing would feel like every day, not what the name of the job is, because that's
yeah,
hard, because that's trying to put a structure or a form to something which you're trying to feel your way to. So it's the wrong tool. So they say, what do you mean sometimes? I say, for example, are you working alone or are you working in a team?
mhm,
Are you helping people grow and develop, or are you just, analytic or studying data or what it,
mhm.
yeah, how, and then we get into a really interesting conversation where a picture starts to emerge of what they're really trying to create.
Absolutely. And when
Yeah.
I work with people, I'll ask that like, if they're sort of struggling with what do I do or whatever,
Yeah.
I go back and say, look back at the jobs that you've had or the things that you've done. What
Yeah.
what did you enjoy there?
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
sometimes in doing that, I don't have to do anything. All I did was prompt the question, but other times I'm like, okay, well, it
Yeah.
sounds to me that you like this, and this. What
Yeah.
jobs have that allow you to do that more, right?
Yeah.
But one of the things, and I've been thinking about this all morning before I talk to you. I was like,
Yeah.
oh,
That's all
I can't
right.
wait. Uh, in my book, I talk about our not yets. I
Oh
think
yeah.
not yet
Not
is
yet.
such a powerful
It
thing
is.
in
Yeah.
terms of look, and as a marathon, right? You're training for a marathon. Ray, have you run your marathon? Not yet.
Not yet. Yeah.
Why? Because the New York Marathon happens in October, right?
Yeah.
It's it's May. You're like, no,
Yeah.
not yet. It's not that you're not going to run it, just
Yeah.
you haven't done it yet.
And your body needs to get itself ready. It's
Well,
not
it
just
does.
your head.
It does.
It's
And yet, and so I think not yet is so powerful because there's
yeah.
things that we're working on. You had in Southeast Asia, you had a really long not yet. Am I ready to
Yes.
go home? Not yet.
Yes.
But right
Yes.
now, what are one or two of your not yets?
Um, some of mine are, the idea I've had in my mind to do retreat-based coaching.
Uh-huh.
I have a vision for that, but it's not ready yet. I don't have
Uh-huh.
it kind of all worked out, but certainly something I'm thinking about. That's one of them. Until about a year and a half ago, the not yet was a loving relationship, a partnership. But I now have met somebody, and I'm a year into a relationship, and I'm really enjoying how that's unfolding.
That's
So,
wonderful.
so that's that came after a long, long time of not
Sure.
having in my life. But I sort of feel like everything, comes when you're ready, and I'm ready.
Absolutely.
I'm ready. So there are a couple. Another not yet I have is I really want to get back on two wheels again. I used to be a really avid motorcycle fan, and I
Hmm.
haven't had one for a long time because I've been traveling around the world and living in different places. But now I'm pretty much based in the UK again. I can actually ride again, and so
I'm going to say my experience of being able to travel in
yeah,
Southeast Asia is that uh, getting a motorcycle is not hard at all. I mean, frankly,
no,
oh, there's a motorcycle, but maybe
yeah.
you don't want to drive there because,
No, well, in Southeast Asia, I did have like scooters and sort of
yeah,
small bikes for commuting around the cities, but I never wanted to travel on a motorbike. It was, not really my cup of tea there. But because there's so many good buses and other ways of getting around.
absolutely, absolutely,
Yeah,
and frankly, sometimes the actual operating of a motor vehicle in some of those places,
yeah, like insurance and all that kind of stuff. How's that all work? So
well, but also just there aren't some. My observation has been that sometimes the rules of the road are very different or
oh, there are.
non-existent, and
I,
I've been
I,
in places where I've been in buses or taxis, and seems like there's people coming at me from six directions,
oh,
and
you're right. In India, people routinely drive on the other side of the road. In the opposite direction, and I drove a Royal Enfield around India with a couple few friends, and yeah, people were just getting knocked off their bikes all the time by
I
buses,
was
trucks.
I was in Delhi on business,
Yeah.
and I, some of the stuff was just like we would be pulling out and there's like cars from three directions coming at us at like, you know 40, 50 kilometers per hour,
Oh gosh.
and I'm like, we're going to get creamed. And
Yeah.
yet we didn't. I remember there were these two older women who were crossing the street and we're coming towards them, and as I said, like 40, 50 kilometers per hour, we're going, and they're just walk. They're not walking faster. We're
Oh
not
dear.
slowing down. And I'm looking, thinking, you got to hit some brakes. We're going to crank. But I believe that there's sort of this karmic belief that it's just all going to work out, and
Yeah.
it
Yeah. You're
does.
right. You're right.
But I'm like, I can't drive here. And I think I
Mm.
found what may be one of the most challenging jobs in the world, Ray.
Which
I
is.
saw it twice in the whole world. It was a driver's ed teacher in New Delhi.
Oh wow.
Holy my
Yeah.
gosh. And
You
I
really
saw
do
a
need to
couple
be
of them
very
where it said
chilled.
student driver, and they're there, and I'm like, well, yes, I get someone's got to teach them, but wow, that's got to be a challenging job.
Wowie. Wowie. Gosh.
So, well,
Did you take it or not?
no, I did not take driving lessons there. I just was
Okay.
watching, but I saw it twice. And I was like, wow,
Right.
that's got to be a really challenging job
Yeah, it
because
has.
of
It
the
really
just
has.
the chaos that is driving in India.
Fair enough.
Um, well, Ray, this has been fabulous. But if people want to get a hold of you,
Mm.
how can they get a hold of you?
Yeah, well, the book I published after my 14-year epic journey is called Life Without a Tie. This is the
Look at
picture of
that.
the cover. And so there's a website, lifewithouttatie.com. That's the
Cool.
easiest way. That's the easiest way. So,
That's awesome. And is your
mm.
book available on Amazon?
Yeah, it is. Yes, it's available everywhere. Yeah, yeah.
Awesome.
Quite a lot of people in America have read it, I think. So,
Well, that's good.
yeah.
I'm sure it's good. I will take time and read it. It sounds fascinating.
Yeah, and in the book, I included in the final chapter of the book what I would call my 6 rules for happiness that came clear to me after 14 years of living that journey. Because a lot
You
of
want
people
to
say,
share? Do you want to share your six
"Oh,
rules?
Oh gosh, I don't know how much time I've got, but a lot of people ask me, what did you learn from the 14 years? That's
Right.
probably one of the big questions I get asked. And I said, well, I can't just say this one thing.
Yeah.
But there's certain ways of living, I think, that are really very, very prerequisite if you're going to have an extraordinary life rather than ordinary. And those would be things like building a strong core foundation in yourself would be one of the first rules. And that's about the amount of attention you pay to your values, your vision, your purpose,
Right.
what your limiting and empowering beliefs are, and working on those constantly. Spending as much time as you can in your element, which is when your strengths and your passions collide and you're in the
Absolutely.
zone. And then lastly, knowing what at any moment in time, what the driving forces are that are influencing your decisions. Like driving forces apply to all of us, all humans, things like the need for recognition, service, the need for belonging, those kinds of things. They're always in play. They're in play every day, but we just don't really realize it. So having a dashboard where you constantly updating all of those things, that's number one. Number two would be what I call taking full 100% ownership for everything that happens.
Mm-hmm.
Because like you said earlier, often things arise, events, they're not brilliant. We don't like them. They're not what we would have wished for, but we've created that event for some reason. Our soul, our spirit is making those events happen for our own benefit. We don't think of it like that, but
Right.
we have to take ownership for it and know that's the real truth. We always have a part to play in what's happening, and we're always at cause in some degree.
Mm-hmm.
Number three would be what I would call having the ability to become your own observer. This is like what I call a superpower, because often when we're really stuck in our own thinking, we've got no option than to go on autopilot and do the same thing we always do. And the way to get beyond that is to step outside of our own thinking and observe ourselves, that we are the person observing the thinking, not in the thinking. And it's quite a different place to look at it from.
Absolutely.
And so that's what the Buddhists would call, being mindful of your own thinking. In particular, they talk a lot about this cycle of craving, which is the source of all suffering for people in the West.
Definitely.
Yeah. And then the fourth rule would be make sure you build as much as you can powerful, purposeful, sustainable relationships throughout your life. Really choose your friends carefully and develop those relationships intentionally, with intention. Because I've got stories in the book. Like I was away for 13 years and I came back to the UK at the end of this journey and took part in a new business because of someone I'd helped 14 years before.
Right.
Reached out to me. And this is a great example. There's lots of examples like that. And then the final rule, I would say, is once you're doing all these things I've already spoken about, the most important thing is you're using all of that understanding to empower others. The best way we can be really deeply fulfilled in our lives is to empower others. It's never about us. So that's got to be part of your life map. If you're not empowering others, it's very hard to be deeply happy.
Absolutely. I totally agree. And one thing, talking about Buddhism, that I years ago was doing a coaching course, and I was reading all these different books, and I always find it funny. You read all these books, and then there's one little nugget from a book that you take away. And the thing that I took away was this idea in Buddhism that things aren't inherently good or bad. It's how we interpret them.
Yeah.
So what I like to say is I live here in California. The sun is out today. So I'm like, oh, it's great. The sun is out. But if I'm a farmer and we're in a drought, I might view the sun being out as not so good.
Of course.
But the sun itself being out is not inherently good or bad. It's how we interpret it. And I think in our life, the way situations come up, the way that we interpret what's happening does directly affect how we react to it. And you're right. You said something about get out of your own way. We are all creatures of habit. We do something the way that we've done it because it's how we know how to do it. It's comfortable. And it is uncomfortable to step out of that and say, I've got to make this different. right?
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
whether it's changing your job, your exercise, your eating, you decide to write a book, run a marathon,
Yeah.
all of that, there is sacrifice. For me, EPIC stands for every
Yes.
pilgrimage includes commitment.
Yeah. I mean, it's another thing we share as a common experience, writing a book. I mean, this is the only book I've written, and I had no idea it was going to be as hard as it was. I mean, it really was.
Yeah. Well, I always joke that I'm a talker, not a typer, and somehow
Yeah.
I've written 3 books and 2 of them Amazon bestsellers. And if you told me that in college, Ray, I would have said,
Right.
no, there's no way. I hate writing. And I
Right.
don't really like writing, but I figured out how I can share my wisdom, get it onto paper, and then have something to form. But yes, writing a book takes so much longer than anyone
Yeah.
interprets, and it's not even the writing part that's hard. It's all the post-writing,
Yeah.
pre-publication. I don't know about you, but when my Epic Begins book came out, I had read it cover to cover like 6 times because I had to keep proofreading.
Yeah. Me too.
And by the time it came out, I was kind of like, I don't actually want to open and read part of my book for about 3 months because I've just been so into my
you end up
book.
knowing
I'm just
where
tired
every
of reading my own words. It
and you
sounds
know where
terrible.
every page, what is on every page, don't you? You kind of know it so well.
You do, and then you're kind of like, someone's like, "Oh, your book," and then you're like, "Here, please read it." I honestly, I'm tired of my own words right now.
Yeah, exactly.
So, well, Ray, I want to thank you so much for being here.
Thank you,
It has
Lana.
just been excellent, epic, might I say.
Thank you.
And I want to remind everyone that if you're interested in beginning your epic journey, go to epicbegins.com. If you go there now, you can get a free copy of e-copy of my book, Epic Begins with One Step Forward: How to Plan, Achieve, and Enjoy the Journey. And as always, I want to remind you that epic choices lead to the epic life that you want.
Get your gift copy of the award-winning book, Epic Begins with One Step Forward, at epicbegins.com. That's a wrap on this episode of Epic Begins with One Step Forward with your host, Xander Sprague, best-selling author, internationally acclaimed public speaker, and licensed professional clinical counselor. To make your next conference or event epic, send an email to Xander at zander@epicbegins.com. Be sure to subscribe so you don't miss the next episode. Remember, epic choices, epic life.